right, guys. Ladies, I have Charlotte Batty here. She is the owner and founder of Minii Adventures. She's a complete badass on a bike, and she is going to talk to us about fear and how these three different parts of it all come together. I know you guys are so excited. Charlotte, tell us a little bit more about you and kind of your background in mountain.
Yeah. All right, a little bit about me. I've been mountain biking for a long time. I got into it because I have 3 older siblings, and my oldest brother originally found it like in, I don't know, maybe like the year 2000. Long story short there, he started racing. I was getting dragged races anyways, and I got put in feed zone. And so by the time it was my turn, I was like, heck yes, I want to do this, and joined my siblings. So I raced for 10 years cross country. Prior to moving into like the elite category, I was like, I don't know if I really love this. It kind of started to feel a little bit like a job with like the training and everything. I was like, I just want to ride my bike. So I took a year off and kind of landed in like the guiding and coaching side of things. And it just really snowballed from there. And then just like from my background, like the only way that you really got into riding kind of back in the early 2000s was you raced. Like we don't have much or didn't have much up here in Ontario. So working in our local bike park, just seeing like the lack of ladies out riding, and I was like, hey, I think there's something I can do here to help give back to the community and just get more people on bikes, but more women on bikes also. So yeah,
that's awesome. I did the same thing when it came to like soccer. That's how I got into playing soccer a lot, and like went to playing soccer in college. Was my brother played, and so it was, you get drugged to it and you just keep going.
Yeah. I mean, it's
Sure.
awesome because we have a really close family now because of it, and we all still ride. Like my sister races professionally. My brothers are big like adventurers and do a lot of like crazy trips on bikes and stuff. So yeah.
That's awesome. I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much for coming on here. I know that fear is it's a huge subject. I know it's been talked a lot about in the group lately, as far as, and also even since COVID started, it's been talked about, because we don't want to hurt ourselves. We want to make smart decisions. Gear is a part of that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So I know you have 3 pillars that you kind of roll into. And then also, if you guys are on here live, I'd love to know that you're here. Give Charlotte some love. Hit that like button and the love button. She can't see the comments, but I'm going to be interrupting her here and there so she can know what you guys are saying. First off for y'all is, do you guys have fear when you ride? Is it a part of how you ride? And does it change what you do on the bike? So I'd love to see your comments for that. Charlotte, you have some like main pillars that I really liked, of like physical part, the skill part, and the mental part. Can you kind of talk through a little bit of like base for some of those?
Yeah. I'd be lying if I said I didn't get scared on the bike ever. I think fear is a good thing to have. It just keeps things in check. It keeps your ego in check. It can be humbling in some situations. And realistically, at the end of the day, when I'm coaching somebody that's trying to get over a mental block, I'm like, if you're not hells yeah, like hell yes on doing it, I'm like, it's a hell no. Like if you're mentally not there, then everything else is just not going to feel solid underneath that, which is going to include your physical and your mechanical. So the one thing I am so fortunate for, my dad taught me at a really young age, is a lot of it is mind over matter. So the big things we can do is to make sure mechanically we're set up and physically we're set up, and then mentally just try to get over that and just kind of like trust the process a little bit. Like as long as you know everything, like you've crossed all your T's and dotted all your I's, it's like you just gotta trust the process a little bit. So yeah, the big thing for me though, it's like the mental. If the mental isn't there, like the mechanical and the physical just come as a part of that, and vice versa. The two of them come together to give you like a more confident like headspace over it. Yeah, I can dive as deep into any of those as you want.
Oh, we're gonna dive deep into it, Charlotte. We're gonna get in there. So a couple of the ladies on here are saying that they have some fear of some downhill parks. Not so much from crashing it so far. I think we're waiting for some of the other ladies to put in some of their comments. It's a little bit delayed as far as what the comments pop up and to what Aunt Agnes says, woohoo, coach. And then Sandra says, yes, but the more I read scary stuff, the more I recognize scary stuff. And then it gradually becomes fun. And that she's ready for the next level of scary. Do you have any stories? I'm going to put you on the spot here. Do you have any stories of whenever you came up to something and you were pretty nervous about it and it kind of took you a little while to do it?
So my background was very much cross country, downhill, and kind of the more like enduro style came in the last like 10 years of my riding. So I was always taught like to keep the wheels on the ground. So for me, in technical features at a young age, I was able to kind of push that fear out and not let it take the better of me in those situations. But when it comes to leaving the ground, all the time I'm like, oh my God, like it's like the most terrifying but like exhilarating experience at the same time. So for me, it's like big jumps and big drops really start to play with my head. And yeah, I'm like, sometimes I just have to go back and go through my little process. And like I wrote a little like process down that I take my students through. So all the time.
Oh, I can't wait to hear about that. There's some jumps definitely get me as well. I think it's a lot of, you just got to learn where your body is. Oh man.
Yes.
How it's going to react, what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
No, man. So we got some other ladies commenting. Fear that falling off, drops next to the trail, exposure. Kim says, yes, she wants to know your process. There's fear of other riders coming up behind them, that they're not good enough.
Yeah.
You know, have the skills, not scales. I don't know anybody that has scales. Right. The lizard just makes me think.
I don't know, I ride a lot in
in situations that you're new to riding or you're riding a new trail and the personal techniques to different share they want to know about. Sweet. Love it. So let's dive a little bit deeper, Charlotte, into how those components interact with each other a little bit more.
All right. I'm like, I just want to make sure I hit all my points. So the thing is mechanical, right? So doing our bike checks every ride, making sure like tires are inflated properly, brakes are working, shifting's running smoothly. You don't want like a gear skipping as you're trying to pedal into a feature. You want to make sure you can stop if you decide to uncommit to a feature. Doing regular bike checks, like deeper bike checks, so like your bolt checks and, you know, taking it to the shop regularly, getting your suspension built once a year. So there's things you can do to make sure your like bike is up to snuff. The other thing that comes with that is a bit of armor. So I always say like wear what you feel comfortable, but don't get the false sense of confidence that the more you wear is going to like make you invincible. The way I see it is like armor is there to help diffuse the situation, but it doesn't eliminate the situation. If you're gonna fall and it's gonna hurt regardless. The armor just really helps kind of just maybe hurt a little bit less or do a little less damage. So I always wear knee pads when I ride. Depending where I'm riding, I might wear elbow pads. Like if you're in a lot of rock that's really sharp, like I like to wear you know, clothing that's not going to rip, so a little bit more durable. Like I have like a heavier downhill style like pants, maybe something like that. And the big thing for me, I find, is I get a little bit of false sense of confidence when I put my full face on, because I've had a lot of work done to my teeth growing up. Like my parents would kill me if I did anything to that. So whatever you feel most comfortable in, but I personally don't like wearing a lot because I feel like I lose a lot of like mobility, and I like to be very nimble on the bike. So like chest protectors and spinal protectors, like probably should wear them for some of the bigger stuff. But I like to be very like I have a feeling that I need to go with, and a lot of gear kind of takes that away from me. But by all means, if you're running out and you want those tires to start leaving the ground, like armor is a great place to start, right? Help diffuse like the little stuff. So yeah, make sure you're and gear. Do regular helmet checks. Make sure there's no cracks or anything like that. Helmets have a shelf life. I would assume kind of does too. So I don't know. I think it's like every 5 years you should replace the helmet just because the foam starts to deteriorate. Knee pads I only wear like 1 or 2 seasons and they're done. They're usually stretched out at that point. But that's the big thing with equipment. So of the pillars, that's the mechanical. The physical. So this is where I come in as a skills coach. So basically, when you want to progress into new stuff, it pays to learn from a professional. Tires leaving the ground is usually the big one, like jumps and drops. And some of us can figure it out, but if you really have no idea what you're doing, you might get lucky with the small stuff. But if you don't have that really strong foundation on the bike, and again, that's where I come in, the bigger the features get and the more consequence, it's just the more chances for things to start to crumble and be you. So yeah, work with a skills coach, work with a professional. It definitely pays. I mean, 99% of the stuff that I teach realistically with more intermediate and advanced riders is like refinement in just body position. So getting people back centered in the bike, like a chin over the stem, hips over the seat when you're standing on the bike. How you're loading through the bike. Are you loading too heavy through the legs, not enough for the upper body and the front end of the bike? Things like that. So that's just stuff that we're able to see that you might not be able to see. But the big thing is like feeling too, right? Like, so we're able to ask you the questions that like, did that feel good, or did you feel this in your hands versus your feet and things like that? So working.
Yeah, totally. I'm gonna slide in a little note of making sure that if you do some of the skills, like you need to be strong to be able to maintain some of that.
Yeah, and then someone like yourself, right? So my the place where I struggle the most is on big drops. When I say big drops, I mean anything like over 6 feet. And my fear is that when I land, I'm not going to physically be strong enough to take that compression. So someone like Liz can help you get to that point and make sure you're doing the appropriate things off the bike to find balance when you get on the bike. So check out Liz's stuff.
Yeah, it's just a lot of like it. I think Lindsay was on here and she just had a big crash and she like hit herself in the stomach bar. And she was like, I'm so happy I've been working on my core because that would have hurt a lot worse.
Right? Anything to like the gut.
Right? It sucks so bad.
I'm like, extremities are good, but anything in the torso, just, you know, it's going to hurt.
Right? It's just going to, there's just a lot of vital things here.
The important thing.
Right. vital life. But definitely knowing the skills and working with somebody that can help go through some things, just like you were saying, like heavy in the feet, light in the hands, what are you feeling, body awareness.
Yeah.
Side note is Charlotte's going to be talking about that component with the Ride Life team this month. I'm super excited to see her video on that.
Yeah. I'm excited to do it.
Yeah. And it's helping like our understanding of what's going on in our body through that. Before we dive in, I want to dive a little bit deeper into some skill stuff
Sure.
with you. Before we dive into that, let's talk about the mental side of it.
Okay. I mean, I have a list of things I can go through for the mental. The big thing is like start small, get good habits forming, progress like in small increments. So if you're learning how to drop for the first time, some people will say don't progress more than a foot. I'll say just go 6 inches at a time if you can. And realistically, the more you do stuff, the more you start to like literally desensitize yourself to it in a good way. So you start to get familiar with that feeling of being in the air and what that compression is going to feel like. And then there's lots to do with like visualization, really, because when you're tires are leaving the ground, or you're dropping into like a chute or something like rocky, you can't always see like your exit points. So there's a lot to do with like pre-ride, re-ride, then free ride, or walking the line, walk your bike through the line, start to get those images so that when you come into a section, you can actually start to like visualize like where you're going to be next. And the whole idea of like, you go where you look, so use the power of your visual to your advantage. Like I always say, like cast little like lifelines out, your A, your B, and your C markers, and then so when you start to get into that panic situation, like cast those little lifelines out to like these visual markers, which you'll identify when you walk the line first, and then just to kind of keep you from looking down and getting caught in the section, it'll like keep pulling you forward.
For sure. I love the one of those that I've used a ton is the walking your bike through.
Yeah.
And just, especially if it's a more technical feature, or like just even knowing in those points and markers, same thing. I do those, like you have those visual cues of what to look in for. Ladies, I want to ask you guys, do you guys use any of these things? If you're new to biking, which I know a lot of us are, it's utilizing some of these things that you may not even think about or may not even be told to you. I remember when the first person told me to walk my bike down, I was like, oh.
The other
that
thing
makes so much sense.
The other thing with that too, I find if you walk a line first, sometimes standing at the bottom of a feature or on the other side and you look back, now this can go two ways. Number one, it'll go, it'll look less intimidating seeing it from the other side sometimes. But sometimes it goes in the other direction. So.
Yeah.
For the most part.
You're like, oh my God, it's big.
Yeah. The big thing I find too is a lot of stuff, for the most part, looks harder than what it is. And that's again kind of coming back to like the mind over matter, like, you know, walk over it, walk the bike through, find your line, find your focal points. You know, as you're walking through, like picture what you'll be doing in each step of the way. And then it all just like kind of comes together. And then that's like just a little bit of like trust the process. You mechanically got your bike there, your armor, your gear, whatever that is. And then the physical. So you've done like the warm-ups, you've done the drills, you've learned the proper technique. And then mentally you just got to like put it all together and then like go. Commit.
that outcome or expectation comes into that, because if you have those main points, then you will automatically assume a better or good outcome, a good expectation going in.
Yeah.
And like if you are worried about one of those specific parts, then that's when to go back to that skill part, you know, yeah. Right? Like especially if that's the part that you're worried in on. And I think that for a lot of the ladies, it is part of it. Let me just ask, is it the skill part, ladies, that you worry about? Like, is it that you don't think you can manage that? Like making those moves, making that line, actually being able to commit to it? Or is it the mental side of it? I know part of it is just the fear in itself of crashing. And that's whenever you break down what Charlotte said even more, right?
Well, the big thing I always ask my students when they're like, this intimidates me, or I'm not sure if I'm ready for this kind of thing, and I'm like, or like whenever that term like fear or scared of comes in, I always like to dive a little deeper and be like, well, what is the fear of? Is it a fear of unknown? Is it a fear of falling? Is it a fear of, you know, my wheel getting stuck in this? Is it a fear of over compressing? And then when you can kind of break down what it is, you can then kind of stare it in the face, like, okay, how can I like minimize this risk or avoid it altogether? I think that's the big thing. A lot of women, as women, we tend to overanalyze. We get in our heads, and I'm so guilty of it too. But like you just got to sit down and you got to like stare it in the face and be like, okay, what is it that's actually giving me the mental hiccup? Okay, I'm scared of over compressing in the landing of a drop. Okay, well, I'm going to start small, work my way back up, get used to that compression. I'm going to make sure the bike is up to like snap. I'm going to make sure I'm doing my push-ups and squats off of the bike and everything. So then I know it all comes together. And yeah, like, what is it that you're actually scared of?
Yes, I think that's so important, because whenever you just say if you're crashing, like, what part of it, what's going to make you crash? What's causing that?
Exactly.
Because none of us want to get hurt. One, that equals time off the bike, it equals other things we have to do. Like, and so I think everybody has that fear of crashing. Like, I don't want to crash. Mm-hmm. And changing it as to what part would make you crash.
Exactly.
Is huge. A lot of ladies are saying that they have a fear of falling. A lot of the mental side, injuries and concussion previously.
Yeah.
Emily says that she progresses through things really slowly, and also doesn't expect that if she's done something once, she'll always be able to do it. Some days she doesn't feel as focused, tunes in with her bike, and doesn't do anything like that. Doesn't do anything sketchy on those days. I think that's really smart, Emily.
It's not knowing you. No. I have those days too when I'm like, just my brain's overconsumed with like running a business, or I'm a little bit fatigued in my body that day. I'll be like, yeah, no, today's not the day. And I'm okay with that. And I think a lot of that comes back to ego. So depending on like the environment that you're in or the people you're riding with, don't get suckered to the peer pressure. The other thing too, there's the opposite side of that. And I find when I hit these mental blocks, I hate to admit, sometimes I go right with the guys. Sometimes I need that energy that's like, oh yeah, you can do this. Like, you've got it, follow my wheel in, or whatever it is. I find sometimes, to be honest, riding with like certain levels of rider or certain energy of riders is if they're like, oh, I don't know, that looks scary. There's also this like negative energy in the group. And I'm very sensitive to that. So if the whole group is like, oh, you're really risky doing that kind of thing, then I'm like, ooh, should I be doing this? Like, is this a good idea? Like, but I know I can do it. So don't fall for the peer pressure, whether it's like you can do it or you shouldn't do it either.
It's important to have that just that self-confidence within of, I believe I know my skills, I'm on point with this. And same thing if you're new to rider, or even just a couple years in, like you'll learn even more as you go of what your skills are as you do it. And also you'll learn that you need refining of different skills for different situations.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I do when I want to progress into some stuff, and these are just like my little tidbits. So walk the bike through the line. Sorry, walk through the line. Walk the bike through the line. So by walking the line, you're going to find like the entry, the exit, and then the beyond markers. So those are where you can cast your little lifelines. I like to walk the bike through lines in certain sections. I want to know that pedals are going to clear, or bottom bracket's going to clear, where the wheel sucks are going to be. And then what I'll do is I'll do a couple like dry runs into a feature. So the big thing is with that is establishing literally a point of commitment. And that is the point that, you know, once you cross, you have to either maintain a speed, faster or slower, or it's your last chance to like pull the parachute and bail. And that's a big thing too, is knowing that if you go to get into it, you can get out of it. But also when you're walking the bike through or walking the line, know your bailout points. Like know, like, okay, once I drop into this, I am committed to staying on the bike, or I just have to get to here and then I can safely get off the bike. Two other things I like to do is if you're able to like ride by a feature, because a lot of times drops and jumps are often ridden with a lot of speed, and speed is scary. Like when you're riding at a jump pace and you know you're doing like 30K an hour, like it's freaking intimidating. Like, don't get me wrong, like I think about it too, but if you can ride beside a feature without actually hitting it, at the speed that it should be ridden at, that's a great way to start to like kind of just feel the entry, and then eventually you just kind of trust the process a little bit again after that. And then the other thing I like to do is find a trusted rider, so somebody that you can trust can ride that feature really well. So again, this is where like a skills coach comes in, and I will tow people in, or I'll have people actually tow me in. What that means is they'll pace me into the feature. So if there's a feature that there's a minimum speed you have to hit it at, because things get scary when we go fast, then I know like, okay, I need to be this close to this rider in order to ride this safely, or like I gotta pull the cord kind of thing. So those are a couple other things. Visualization's huge for me. Like, I remember growing up when I was racing, we would pre-ride courses. We'd ride like 15 laps of a course, in the couple days before it. I would have every inch of that course memorized. Like a 5-mile course, 3, 4, 5-mile course. I would have that like every inch of it memorized, and all I needed to do was like hit all my little points and just execute. But trusting the process, because I knew exactly what was coming. I had experienced it, I felt it, and I knew what the process was going to be like. So
yeah, I think those are some great tips. Of a couple things that stood out to me that aren't as common or not as commonly discussed is know your bailout points.
Yes.
I think that's a really nice thing. Know your commitment points.
And how to bail too. How to get off
of it. Bail as well.
Yep.
And then also exit. And then when you are doing the bike walkthrough, you're checking for clearance, you're checking for pedal strikes, you're checking for where you're going to be looking. And like, it is that visualization process. It's Can you picture yourself riding it? Can you see you going through that entry point, that middle and exit point? Can you see what happens if you do need to bail?
Yeah.
Does it make you really anxious when you think about that? Does it make you comfortable when you think about that?
Yeah.
And because a lot of these things they're not committal. Like doing that aspect is not committal. You can do that on any unfamiliar area. You can do that on unfamiliar technical features. Like all of that is it's a good method of walking through different features.
Yeah, absolutely.
Agnes asked what to do for unfamiliar trails. Shay said she loves the bailout points. I'll let you answer the unfamiliar trails. I know what I would say, but I want to hear what you would say.
Like, take it slow. If you have the option to follow a rider who knows it and that you can trust is not going to like tow you into anything unexpectedly. Otherwise, take it slow. Anything you're unsure of, like be responsible, and it's okay to stop and look and then decide like yes or no you're going to ride it. But the big thing is just take it slow, be very aware of like what's going on. So good trail scanning, just like we do in our car. We don't look at the pavement in front of the vehicle. We look like ahead. We're looking for brake lights, cars moving in and out, but we also got to come back in and double check with what's actually happening with the front wheel so it doesn't pull out its hidden agenda. But those would be like my big things is just take it slow, check it out. If in doubt, check it out. What would you say, Liz?
Yep. It's so true.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
a lot of that is just taking it slow. Like if you're on an unfamiliar trail, it's even more of a reason to not go fast. Like it's even more of a reason to actually get to know it. Like, are you going to ride it more than once? Is it just a one-time gig? Like, are you going to take notes and I don't know, it's like playing on the trail. Like, are you going to figure out where the different fun moves are? Like, instead of looking at it in like a light of what's scary, look at it in a light of like, ooh, where am I going to be so stoked?
Yeah. I'm very much like that. I'm like, I like when new riders follow my wheel because I'm, again, just like so many years of experience, like being the eyes for riders behind me. Like I actually find it hard sometimes to follow a wheel. Because I'm like, I can't see like around very well. And I'm like, oh, we missed that like really fun little like rock hop or something like kind of to the side of the trail or whatever it is. So I'm like, I have so many years of experience, like being the eyes for people behind me. And so like choosing wisely based on who's following me. But then I like to get really creative, and I'm like, I never ride like the center or the most obvious line. Like I always take the like Wild West lines, but they often end up being like a good choice. But this is part of that.
It's like, always like the what? Yeah, it's the fun lines. I don't know. I think it's a different mindset. Like it's always how you approach something. Like, are you approaching it with fear and nervousness? Or are you approaching it with that it's going to be fun? I have a whitewater kayaking background, so I started kayaking when I was 9, and I did I got pretty high up in it before, of like being able like challenging levels, and used to compete in that. And that's a committing time.
Oh my gosh.
Like, you look at what rapids are, you look what's going on. Like you decide whether you're going to do it.
Yeah.
You know? Somebody asked me once, they're like, Liz, I don't know if this trail's too hard for me. And I was like, I'm not the best person to ask for that, because to me, a lot of trails just become a hiking trail if you can't ride it. Yeah. And so it's not too hard. You're just going to be walking a lot more.
Yes. Yeah.
And so if you're okay walking it, you can go try it. You're just probably going to walk, which is perfectly fine.
Oh yeah,
it's perfectly fine to walk.
Depending on the area, like I find, I don't know, like Moab, for example, riding there, as soon as you get into like the Black Diamond trails, I'm like, you end up getting off the bike and looking a lot because you just simply don't know where to go. You're like, am I riding off an edge, or am I going into like a wash hole, or is it going to roll on the other side? So I'm like, it's okay. And usually stuff like that, like I'll just commit to that day of like doing 2 laps. One's going to be a lot of hike-a-bike and stopping and looking. And then the next lap is like, I want to carry my rhythm, and I'll do my best to memorize those lines so I know exactly where I need to go when to, and then have some fun in the second lap. So it's like you kind of do these like little scout laps, which is like pre-ride, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you want to make sure that you go from the right place. You want to make sure that you are, same thing as we just talked about with the new trail, like the fun line, I should probably not go that line.
The line?
Yeah, the impossible line, the off the edge of the cliff line. Oh my gosh, exposure gets me so much. I'm just like, oh my gosh, there's a drop. Oh my gosh, there's a drop. It goes down really far right there.
Yes, the big thing I find, and I do this a lot when it comes to like trail scanning, is it's okay to see things in your peripheral, but just don't let it become the focus. So if you're riding near a cliff edge, you're riding between narrow trees, I'm like, you can look ahead where you want to go, or where you want to be past that section, but you can still acknowledge it in your peripheral, and that's okay as long as you don't bring the actual like awareness to it. Because again, you go where you look. So if you give that space, it's like, hey, you gave me an inch, I'm gonna take a mile kind of thing. So it's like, use your peripheral, like you can still see and check in, but you can use that like a bit of like a fixation to get you to where you want to go past that section, get you through the trees, get you past the cliff edge. Exposure is a big one. I've had a lot of exposure to exposure at a very young age, so it doesn't I don't get uncomfortable with it, but a lot of people do, and a lot of it is just simply a lack of exposure to that. So your body kind of goes in this like fight or flight mode, right? Like we're near a cliff edge, we don't want to be anywhere near this, and here we are trying to ride by it, kind of thing. So it's a natural instinct, and it's just kind of acknowledge that, like process what's going on, and then just try to move on, kind of thing.
I think that also even goes back to, why are you nervous? Why are you fearful? Just like we talked about earlier, like what's the reality within it?
Yep.
reality is that maybe I need to practice some skinnies a little bit more.
Mhm.
You know, I need to trust my ability to ride in a straight line or ride in a more narrow path. You know, like breaking down, I love that what you said of why are you fearful?
Mhm.
What's the like peg it in, because that's how we do a lot within everything else in our life. Like what's the causation? What's the reason behind? And that's, you don't necessarily just work on the fear. That's the symptom. What's causing the symptom?
Exactly. I love that.
Like, that's what you got to dive into. And so like before, we're trying to plan a trip out west to maybe some areas that have some exposure. And so I'm probably going to be riding and working on some other skinny stuff before next spring, you know, or this winter, whenever it actually ends up being okay to do that.
Oh, what a year.
With that. So I know we talked, I'm just going to kind of summarize a little bit of what we talked about. You gave us some great points of what to do for whenever we're approaching a feature, how to break down, how to walk through, how to look at the bailout points, how to bail out, looking at your visual points, making sure your bike will clear, your committal points, excuse me, and also like your speed, other aspects within that. We talked a lot about the different aspects, like the mechanical of our bike, our gear, physical, which includes our skills and other strength aspects, and then the mental side and kind of breaking that part down. What are some other tips that you may have for us, Charlotte, in your nice little notebook that you have there?
I think that covered a lot of it. I'd say the big thing is build confidence. So start small. Do some like warm up exercises. Maybe they're like it's just practicing on a curb edge in the parking lot before you get out onto the trail. Maybe it's doing some track stands to warm up that slow speed balance. But try to, like, I like to progress in baby steps. I always like to think about like bite little like chewable sized pieces off, rather than trying to like shove the whole donut down your throat.
Right.
But like start small, warm up, build some confidence, and then like, yeah, make sure the mechanical or the physical, everything's there. And then mentally, sometimes it's like, I always joke, my job is to get people out of their comfort zone. And sometimes like you just gotta like trust that process. Like the magic, those diagrams where it's like life and then like the magic outside of the box. It's like, that's where the magic happens. You do that. But make sure you're taking the proper steps to get there. If in doubt, check it out. You can always work with a professional skills coach or someone like yourself to build that strength off of the bike. But at some point or another, you just literally got to grab life by the horns or the handlebars and commit and go for it.
Yeah, for sure. I love the baby steps. I think it's like breaking down a couple of how you get there, how you do it. Just like for me, with like working on skinnies for the exposure, working on different parts of moving your bike around, moving your body on your bike, like figuring out if you are uncomfortable with roots, then put some sticks down the yard. Like practice on things that make your bike move in different ways. Like changing it up and changing your thought process around it.
Yeah. I like to see you challenge, like, versus like, again, it's the like mind over matter. So it's like when you come up to something, it's like, okay, how am I going to get through this? What do I need to do? And it's like, then it's like, it becomes a process of like figuring it out. And like, I like that challenge. And this is why I love traveling and riding my bike so much, because like the trails at home here, for example, I grew up riding them. So I'm like, for lack of better words, I get kind of bored. Like I need to kind of keep putting myself outside of my comfort zone. And that's where I get like the rush and the thrill. So.
Yes. It's all about, there was a book that I read, and in that book, it talked about stress And it talked about good stress and bad stress.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was just how you framed it in your mind.
Perspective.
And so you can look at it how you just looked at it as, this is a challenge. This is something I'm working up toward. This is something that's going to push me, but I like it. Or you can phrase it as, this is scary. I might get hurt. This pushes my boundaries in a negative way. Mm-hmm. And it's all on how you frame it. And if you take some of the necessary steps, that you do trust your bike, that you do trust your skills. Yeah. It may push your skills a little bit, but you trust your base skills. You trust how you can manage and maneuver your bike. You trust your strength. You trust your mental part. Like, all of those coming together makes it now a challenge versus fear.
Mm-hmm. I heard something once, and it's kind of like you train your brain how to think and how to look at things. Like, I think that's kind of just summarizing like what you just said. Like, it's training how you think about something. And for me, like, it all comes back to perspective. Like, yeah.
Yeah, it's so true. You train your brain for how you want to react to things. Like, we all have these gut reactions of like, oh shit, that is.
Yeah, hard now.
You can change how you react to some of those things, like your self-talk. You can change how, if you say like, oh no, that's scary, then if you say that to so many people, it probably will be fucking scary.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But if you say like, oh, that looks like a challenge,
yeah,
then you will think of it more as a challenge versus, oh my gosh, that's scary.
Oh yeah.
So to leave these ladies, any leaving note with that being the end, and then how can they get a hold of you, Charlotte? Because you're fantastic.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you so much for having me on. This is awesome. I think this is an area that like men never talk about. Men won't admit like this ego and mental block. So I think this is really awesome what you're doing for the community. So I just want to say thank you. I'm on social media. I'm online just at Minii_adventures on Instagram, and then at Minii Adventures on Facebook. My website's just miniadventures.com. So if you ever have any like questions or want some tips or anything, like you can always email and reach out or message. And yeah,
perfect. Don't forget it's 2 eyes in the Minii.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh, I forgot. M-I-N-I.
I was like typing it in. I'm like, why is it not coming up? Why is it not coming up? Oh, 2 eyes.
The sad part is I don't have a good story why there's 2 eyes. The original like logo I had in my head involved like some sort of bike. So I wanted 2 eyes so I could have 2 bike wheels, and then it just never actually came to life.
The things you think about whenever you're starting a company, and then later on realize that it's not important.
Exactly. So.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you ladies so much for being part of this. I know that even just talking about it for other ladies in this group, that it's important, and that the more that we empower each other, that we support each other within that, then the better we're all going to be on bikes, and the more fun we'll have.
Yes. Take the
perfect. Yeah. Bye ladies.
Bye. Take care, guys.